What if the reason your desire hasn't fully appeared yet is not because you are doing something wrong, but because you keep leaving the state where it already exists? Many people understand the importance of positive thinking. They can visualize their goals. They can imagine success. They can feel inspired for a few moments, but then something happens. A challenge appears. A delay occurs. Circumstances seem unchanged. Suddenly, doubt returns, fear returns, and they find themselves slipping back into the old version of themselves. The problem is not that they cannot enter the desired state. The problem is that they do not remain there. Think about it. If you could consistently think, feel, and respond as the person who already has what they desire, how different would your life become? How different would your choices be? How different would your confidence feel? How different would your expectations become? The truth is that your life is not shaped by your occasional thoughts. It is shaped by the state you return to most often. A few moments of belief cannot compete with years of doubt unless that belief becomes your dominant way of being. Today, we are going to explore one of the most important principles of transformation: remaining faithful to your desired state. Not for a few minutes, not only when things are going well, but consistently, regardless of appearances, because when you stop leaving the state of your wish fulfilled, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your reactions change, your assumptions change, your identity changes, and eventually your reality begins reflecting the change that has already taken place within you. So, as you listen to this message, consider the possibility that your breakthrough may not require a new technique, a new method, or a new strategy. It may simply require remaining loyal to the state you have already chosen, because the moment you stop leaving the state, everything begins to change. One of the most important principles you can ever understand is that your life is not primarily shaped by your occasional thoughts, temporary emotions, or brief moments of inspiration. Your life is shaped by your dominant state. It is the state you return to most often, the state you identify with most consistently, and the state you accept as normal that ultimately influences your experiences. Many people wonder why their lives remain unchanged even after reading books, watching motivational videos, or practicing positive thinking from time to time. The answer is often simple. A few moments of belief cannot outweigh a dominant state of doubt, fear, or limitation. Think about it for a moment. If a person spends 5 minutes each day imagining success, but spends the remaining hours worrying about failure, which state is likely to have the greater influence? If someone feels confident during a motivational speech, but immediately returns to old habits of fear and uncertainty afterward, what state are they truly living from? The dominant state is always the one that wins, because it is the one that becomes familiar. It becomes the lens through which life is viewed. Most people underestimate the power of the state they occupy daily. They believe that circumstances determine how they feel. If things are going well, they feel confident. If challenges appear, they feel discouraged. If opportunities arise, they feel hopeful. If setbacks occur, they lose faith. Their emotional state constantly changes according to external conditions. As a result, they become reactive rather than creative. They allow circumstances to decide their inner world instead of allowing their inner world to influence how they experience circumstances. The truth is that every state carries its own expectations, assumptions, and behaviors. A person living in a state of confidence notices opportunities that others overlook. A person living in a state of gratitude finds reasons to appreciate life, even during difficult times. A person living in a state of abundance tends to focus on possibilities rather than limitations. In contrast, someone living in a state of fear often expects problems. Someone living in a state of doubt questions every opportunity. Someone living in a state of lack focuses primarily on what is missing. What makes the dominant state so powerful is that it quietly shapes perception. You do not simply see the world as it is. You often see it through the filter of the state you occupy. Two people can experience the same event and interpret it completely differently because they are living from different states of consciousness. One sees possibility where another sees difficulty. One sees growth where another sees failure. One sees opportunity where another sees risk. This explains why changing circumstances alone does not always create lasting happiness or success. Many people believe that if they could just change their environment, their problems would disappear. Yet even when external conditions improve, old emotional patterns often remain. A person who has lived in a state of insecurity may continue feeling insecure despite receiving success. A person who has lived in a state of lack may continue feeling deprived despite gaining more resources. Why? Because the dominant state has not changed. Before lasting transformation can occur, the state must change first. This is why it is so important to become aware of what you consistently identify with. Do you see yourself as someone who is fortunate or unlucky? Do you expect opportunities or disappointments? Do you believe life supports you or works against you? These questions reveal the dominant state you are occupying. Many people spend years unconsciously rehearsing states they do not want. They repeatedly think about past failures, worry about future problems, and focus on current limitations. Over time, these thoughts become familiar. Familiarity creates identity. Eventually, the state feels natural, even if it is uncomfortable. This is one reason people often struggle to change. They are not merely changing thoughts, they are changing the state they have become accustomed to occupying. The good news is that states can be changed. No matter what you have identified with in the past, you can begin choosing a different state today. You can start returning to confidence instead of fear. You can return to gratitude instead of complaint. You can return to fulfillment instead of lack. At first, the new state may feel unfamiliar because it has not yet become dominant. But every time you return to it, you strengthen it. Think of it like building a path through a field. The more often you walk the same route, the clearer the path becomes. In the same way, the more often you return to a chosen state, the more natural it feels. Eventually, confidence becomes easier than doubt. Gratitude becomes easier than complaint. Faith becomes easier than fear. The state that once required effort begins feeling automatic. This is why persistence matters so much. Transformation is not about achieving a perfect mind at every moment of every day. It is about consistently returning to the state you wish to make dominant. Every time you notice yourself drifting into old patterns, gently guide yourself back. Over time, the new state becomes stronger than the old one. Remember, your reality is not created by what you think occasionally. It is influenced by what you consistently accept as true. Your dominant state shapes your expectations, your behaviors, your reactions, and ultimately your experiences. If you want your life to change, begin by changing the state you occupy most often. Choose the state of the person you wish to become. Think from it, feel from it, respond from it, return to it again and again until it feels natural, because whatever state becomes dominant in your life eventually becomes reflected in your reality. And when your dominant state changes, everything else begins to change with it. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to remain in their desired state is because they constantly look for evidence that their desire is becoming reality. They check their circumstances, watch for signs, analyze every detail, and search for proof that something is changing. At first this may seem harmless. After all, who wouldn't want confirmation that their efforts are working? Yet this habit often becomes the very thing that pulls people out of the state they are trying to maintain. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. After planting it, you would not dig it up every day to see if it has started growing. You understand that growth takes place beneath the surface before it becomes visible above the ground. Constantly disturbing the seed would only interfere with the process. In much the same way, constantly checking for evidence can interfere with your ability to remain faithful to your desired state. It shifts your attention away from what you have accepted internally and places it back on what is currently visible externally. Most people have been conditioned to believe that they should only feel confident when they have proof. They believe they should only feel successful when success is visible. They believe they should only feel secure when circumstances provide reassurance. Because of this conditioning, they develop a habit of looking outward for validation. They constantly ask questions such as, "Is it happening yet? Why hasn't anything changed? Where is the evidence?" Without realizing it, these questions keep them focused on the absence of what they desire rather than the presence of it within their consciousness. The problem is not that you notice your circumstances. The problem arises when your emotional state becomes dependent upon them. If you feel confident only when things are going well, your confidence is fragile. If you feel secure only when evidence appears, your security can easily disappear. If you feel fulfilled only when your desire becomes visible, you remain emotionally tied to external conditions. This makes it difficult to remain in the state of the wish, fulfilled, because every circumstance has the power to pull you back into doubt. One of the greatest shifts a person can make is learning to trust their chosen state more than temporary appearances. This does not mean ignoring reality or pretending circumstances do not exist. It means understanding that current conditions are not always a reliable indicator of what is possible. Many important changes happen internally before they become visible externally. New beliefs develop before new results appear. New assumptions take root before new opportunities emerge. The inner transformation often begins long before the outer evidence arrives. Think about how different your life would feel if you stopped demanding constant proof. Instead of checking whether your desire is appearing, you would focus on maintaining the feeling of already having it. Instead of looking for signs every day, you would focus on strengthening your confidence. Instead of worrying about when something will happen, you would continue living from the assumption that it is already unfolding. This approach creates peace because it frees you from the exhausting cycle of constantly measuring progress. Many people unknowingly delay their own growth because they become obsessed with evidence. They treat every day like an examination. If circumstances appear favorable, they feel hopeful. If circumstances appear unchanged, they feel discouraged. Their emotional state rises and falls based on appearances. As a result, they never remain in one state long enough for it to become dominant. They enter the desired state briefly and then leave it the moment they do not see immediate confirmation. The truth is that evidence often follows belief more than belief follows evidence. Every great achievement begins with a period during which the outcome is not yet visible. A successful entrepreneur often believes in an idea before the business succeeds. An athlete believes in victory before winning a competition. A creator believes in a vision before others can see it. In each case, confidence exists before proof becomes available. This principle applies to every area of life. The more you depend on evidence, the more vulnerable you become to temporary circumstances. The more you trust your chosen state, the more stable your confidence becomes. You stop reacting to every delay. You stop interpreting every obstacle as failure. You begin understanding that appearances are often temporary, while your inner state has the potential to create lasting change. Another benefit of releasing the need for evidence is that it helps you stay present. Constantly searching for proof keeps your attention trapped in the future. You become preoccupied with when, how, and where results will appear. But when you trust your assumption, you can focus on living fully today. You can enjoy the present moment while remaining committed to your vision. This does not require perfection. There may still be moments when doubt appears. There may still be times when you are tempted to look for confirmation. The key is awareness. When you notice yourself becoming dependent on evidence, gently return to the state you have chosen. Remind yourself that your confidence does not have to be determined by what you currently see. Remember, the strongest faith is not the faith that appears after proof arrives. The strongest faith is the faith that remains steady before proof appears. It is the ability to remain loyal to your chosen state, even when circumstances have not yet caught up. It is the willingness to trust the process without constantly demanding immediate results. So stop checking for evidence. Stop measuring your progress every day. Stop allowing appearances to decide how you feel. Instead, remain faithful to the state you have chosen. Continue thinking from it. Continue feeling from it. Continue living from it. Because the moment you stop looking for constant proof is often the moment you become truly established in the state of your wish fulfilled. And when that state becomes natural, reality has a remarkable way of reflecting it. One of the greatest misconceptions people have about transformation is the belief that they must remain perfect at all times. They think that once they choose a new state of mind, they should never experience doubt, fear, frustration, or uncertainty again. When these feelings appear, they assume they have failed. They believe they have lost progress or somehow ruined the outcome they desire. But this belief creates unnecessary pressure and often becomes a source of discouragement. The truth is that every person drifts from time to time. Even the most confident individual experiences moments of uncertainty. Even the most disciplined person has days when old habits try to return. Even those who have developed a strong sense of faith occasionally find themselves reacting to circumstances. The difference between those who successfully maintain their desired state and those who do not is not perfection. The difference is persistence. Successful people learn how to return to their chosen state whenever they drift away from it. Think about a ship crossing the ocean. The captain does not expect the vessel to remain perfectly on course every second of the journey. Wind, waves, and currents naturally push it slightly off track. The captain's responsibility is not to eliminate every influence. The responsibility is to notice deviations and gently guide the ship back toward its destination. Personal transformation works in the same way. Your goal is not to avoid every negative thought or emotion. Your goal is to become aware when you drift and consciously return to the state you have chosen. Many people become trapped because they give too much power to temporary moments. They experience a difficult day and immediately assume everything is falling apart. They notice fear and conclude they have lost their progress. They react to a setback and believe they have moved backward. In reality, a temporary reaction does not define your dominant state. What matters is where you choose to return. Imagine someone who has spent years living in a state of doubt and limitation. When they begin adopting a new state of confidence and fulfillment, old patterns may still surface occasionally. This is natural. The mind tends to return to what is familiar. Past habits do not disappear overnight. However, each time that person notices the old pattern and consciously returns to confidence, they weaken the old state and strengthen the new one. This is why persistence is more important than perfection. Perfection creates pressure. Persistence creates progress. Perfection says, I must never have a negative thought. Persistence says, whenever I notice myself drifting, I will return to the state I have chosen. One approach leads to frustration. The other leads to growth. Another important thing to understand is that circumstances often test your commitment to a new state. When life is easy, confidence feels natural. When everything seems to be going your way, it is simple to remain positive. But true transformation occurs when circumstances challenge your assumptions. Can you remain calm when delays appear? Can you remain confident when results are not yet visible? Can you return to your desired state even when the outer world seems unchanged? These moments are not signs of failure. They are opportunities to strengthen your new identity. Every time you choose your desired state over an old reaction, you reinforce the person you are becoming. Every time you refuse to let temporary appearances dictate your emotions, you deepen your commitment to a new way of living. One of the most empowering realizations is that you are never one thought away from failure. Many people fear making mistakes because they believe one moment of doubt will undo all their progress. But transformation is not that fragile. What matters is not the occasional thought that passes through your mind. What matters is the state you consistently return to. If you drift into fear but return to confidence, confidence grows stronger. If you drift into doubt but return to faith, faith becomes more natural. The power lies in the return. This understanding can bring tremendous peace. Instead of constantly monitoring every thought, you begin focusing on direction. You stop asking, am I doing this perfectly? And start asking, where am I returning? This shift removes pressure and allows growth to happen more naturally. Another benefit of returning to the state is that it builds resilience. Life will always contain unexpected situations. There will always be moments that challenge your patience and test your confidence. But when you develop the habit of returning to your chosen state, you become less vulnerable to external conditions. You no longer depend on perfect circumstances to maintain inner stability. You learn how to guide yourself back regardless of what is happening around you. Over time, the process becomes easier. The state that once required conscious effort starts feeling familiar. What once felt unnatural becomes comfortable. The new identity becomes stronger than the old one. You spend less time drifting and more time remaining established in your chosen state. Not because life has become perfect, but because you have become skilled at returning. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is persistence. The goal is not to eliminate every challenge. The goal is to stop allowing challenges to define your state. Whenever doubt appears, return. Whenever fear appears, return. Whenever circumstances tempt you to abandon your vision, return. Because the people who experience the greatest transformations are not those who never drift. They are the ones who refuse to stay lost. They keep returning to the state of fulfillment, confidence, and certainty until it becomes their natural way of being. And eventually, what was once a deliberate choice becomes who they are. That is the power of returning to the state whenever you drift. Make the desired state feel natural, one of the most important steps in maintaining the state of your wish fulfilled is learning how to make that state feel natural. Many people can imagine their desired future for a few moments. They can visualize success, abundance, love, health, or achievement. They can feel inspired while listening to a motivational message. But after a short time, they return to their old patterns of thinking because the new state still feels unfamiliar. The challenge is not entering the desired state once. The challenge is remaining there until it becomes natural. What feels natural tends to dominate your life. You naturally return to thoughts, emotions, and assumptions that feel familiar. This is why people often repeat the same experiences, even when they sincerely want change. They may desire something new, but they continue identifying with old beliefs because those beliefs feel normal. The mind is drawn toward what is familiar, even when the familiar is limiting. Think about any skill you have mastered. There was a time when it felt awkward and unnatural. Driving a car, learning a language, using a computer, or developing a new habit all required conscious effort at first. You had to think about every step, but through repetition, what once felt difficult became automatic. Eventually, you stopped thinking about it because it became part of your natural behavior. The same principle applies to your desired state. At first, thinking from abundance may feel unusual if you have spent years focusing on lack. Confidence may feel unfamiliar if you have identified with insecurity. Success may feel distant if you have become accustomed to struggle. Yet this does not mean the new state is impossible. It simply means it has not yet become familiar. Many people make the mistake of giving up too soon. They enter the desired state, but because it feels unnatural, they assume they are pretending. They conclude that it is unrealistic because it does not match their current circumstances. As a result, they return to old patterns. What they fail to realize is that every new identity feels unfamiliar before it becomes natural. The key is repetition. Every time you return to your desired state, you strengthen it. Every time you choose thoughts that align with the person you want to become, you make that identity more familiar. Every time you respond to life from confidence instead of fear, from abundance instead of lack, from certainty instead of doubt, you reinforce the new state. Imagine a path through a forest. If no one walks the path, it becomes difficult to see. But if people travel it every day, it becomes clear and easy to follow. Your mind works in a similar way. The thoughts and assumptions you repeat become the easiest paths to access. If you repeatedly think from limitation, limitation feels natural. If you repeatedly think from possibility, possibility begins feeling natural. One of the most powerful ways to make a state feel natural is to stop treating it as something separate from you. Many people think of their desire as something distant. They see it as a future event they hope to experience someday. This creates a sense of separation. They continue feeling like the person who wants rather than the person who already is. Instead, begin asking yourself a different question. How would I think if this were already true? How would I feel if this were already my reality? How would I respond to today's challenges if I already possessed the confidence, abundance, or success I desire? These questions help bridge the gap between your current identity and your desired identity. Another important aspect of making the state natural is consistency. A state does not become natural through occasional effort. It becomes natural through repeated occupancy. The more often you return to it, the stronger it becomes. This does not require forcing yourself to feel positive every moment. It simply requires choosing your desired state often enough that it gradually becomes familiar. As the state becomes natural, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop feeling like you are trying to maintain it. You stop feeling like you are pretending. The thoughts, emotions, and assumptions that once required effort begin arising automatically. Confidence becomes your default response. Gratitude becomes your normal attitude. Fulfillment becomes your natural perspective. This is the stage where real transformation occurs. When a state feels natural, you no longer need constant reminders to maintain it. You are no longer fighting old habits because the new state has become stronger than the old one. Your identity begins aligning with the reality you desire. Many people believe that reality changes first and then a new state becomes natural. In truth, the opposite often happens. The state becomes natural first, and then reality begins reflecting it. Your assumptions change before your circumstances. Your self-concept changes before your results. Your inner world changes before your outer world. That is why patience is so important. Do not judge your progress by how natural the state feels today. Judge it by your willingness to keep returning. Every return strengthens the new identity. Every repetition deepens the new state. Every moment spent thinking and feeling from your desired reality brings it closer to becoming your normal way of being. Remember, the goal is not merely to visit the desired state. The goal is to live there so consistently that it feels like home. When confidence feels natural, you act differently. When abundance feels natural, you see opportunities differently. When fulfillment feels natural, you experience life differently. And when the desired state becomes natural, you no longer have to force change. You become the person who naturally aligns with the reality you desire. That is when everything begins to shift. That is when transformation becomes inevitable. Because what feels natural eventually feels real, and what feels real eventually becomes reflected in your life. One of the greatest secrets to lasting transformation is learning how to make your desired state feel natural. Many people can enter a positive state for a few moments. They can imagine their dream life, visualize success, and feel inspired while listening to motivational messages. But after a short period of time, they find themselves returning to old patterns of thinking and feeling. Why does this happen? Because the old state feels familiar, while the new state still feels unnatural. The mind naturally returns to what feels normal. It does not necessarily choose what is best for you. It chooses what is familiar. If you have spent years identifying with struggle, then struggle feels normal. If you have spent years expecting disappointment, then disappointment feels familiar. Even if you desire something greater, Your mind may continue pulling you back toward old assumptions simply because they have been practiced for so long. This is why entering the desired state once is not enough. The goal is to occupy it so consistently that it becomes your new normal. Think about learning any new skill. The first time you drive a car, play an instrument, or learn a language, it requires conscious effort. You have to think about every step. It feels unnatural because it is new, but with repetition, what once felt difficult becomes automatic. Eventually, you perform the skill without thinking about it because it has become natural. The same principle applies to your inner world. If you want to experience confidence, abundance, success, or fulfillment, you must become familiar with those states. You must spend enough time thinking from them, feeling from them, and identifying with them that they begin feeling normal. At first, this may require effort. It may even feel uncomfortable because it challenges old patterns. But that discomfort is often a sign that change is taking place. Many people give up too soon because they mistake unfamiliarity for impossibility. They assume that because the desired state feels unnatural, it must not be real. They think, "This doesn't feel like me," and immediately return to old habits. But every new identity feels unfamiliar in the beginning. The fact that it feels different does not mean it is wrong. It simply means it has not yet become established. One of the most powerful ways to make a state feel natural is through repetition. Every time you return to your desired state, you strengthen it. Every time you think from the perspective of the person you wish to become, you reinforce a new identity. Every time you choose confidence over fear, gratitude over complaint, or abundance over lack, you make the new state more familiar. Consider someone who desires financial abundance. If they spend most of their time worrying about money, they are reinforcing the state of lack. But if they begin consistently focusing on possibility, opportunity, and value, they gradually strengthen a different state. Over time, abundance begins feeling more natural than scarcity. Their assumptions change, their expectations change, and eventually their behavior changes as well. Another important aspect of making a state feel natural is consistency in daily life. It is easy to feel inspired during a visualization session or after listening to an uplifting message. The real challenge is maintaining that state throughout ordinary moments. Can you remain confident when faced with uncertainty? Can you remain grateful when circumstances are not ideal? Can you continue identifying with your desired reality even when external evidence is limited? This is where transformation becomes real. The state becomes stronger every time you choose it despite appearances. Each time you refuse to return to old assumptions, you weaken their influence. Each time you remain loyal to your desired identity, you strengthen it. It is also important to stop treating your desired state as something distant. Many people think of success, abundance, or fulfillment as future experiences. They see them as goals they are trying to reach, but this mindset keeps the desired state separate from them. Instead, begin asking yourself how you would think, feel, and respond if your desire were already fulfilled. This simple shift helps you move from pursuing the state to occupying it. As the desired state becomes more natural, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop feeling like you are forcing positive thoughts. You stop feeling like you are pretending. The new assumptions become automatic. Confidence becomes easier. Gratitude becomes easier. Faith becomes easier. The person you once hoped to become starts feeling like the person you already are. This is often the turning point. When the desired state feels natural, it no longer requires constant effort to maintain. It becomes your dominant state, and because your dominant state influences how you perceive, decide, and act, your external life begins reflecting the change that has already taken place within you. Remember, reality often mirrors what feels natural to you. If limitation feels natural, you tend to recreate limitation. If abundance feels natural, you become more open to abundance. If success feels natural, you begin acting in ways that support success. This is why making the desired state feel natural is so important. Do not worry if it feels unfamiliar today. Every powerful transformation begins that way. Stay consistent. Keep returning to the state. Continue thinking from it, feeling from it, and living from it. With time and repetition, what once felt distant will feel normal. What once felt unnatural will feel familiar. And what once felt like a dream will begin feeling like your reality. Because the moment your desired state becomes natural, you stop trying to become that person. You simply are that person. And from that place, everything begins to change. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is moving from living toward a desire to living from it. Most people spend their lives pursuing goals from a position of separation. They see what they want as something distant, something outside themselves, something they must someday reach. As a result, they constantly feel as though they are chasing happiness, success, abundance, love, or fulfillment. The desire remains in the future, and they remain in the present, always trying to close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. The problem with this approach is that it keeps the feeling of not having alive. When you constantly focus on getting something, you reinforce the idea that you do not already possess it. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions are centered around the absence of your desire. You may work hard, visualize regularly, and think positively from time to time, but if your dominant feeling is still one of waiting, then you continue identifying with the version of yourself who does not yet have what they want. Living from the end is completely different. Instead of thinking like someone who is trying to obtain a desire, you begin thinking like someone whose desire is already fulfilled. Instead of asking, "How can I get this?" you ask, "How would I think if this were already true?" Instead of wondering when success will arrive, you begin embodying the mindset of someone who already feels successful. This subtle shift changes everything because it changes the state from which you live. Imagine someone who desires financial abundance. If they are living toward abundance, they may constantly worry about money, check their circumstances for signs of improvement, and feel anxious about the future. Their attention remains fixed on what is missing, but if they begin living from abundance, their relationship with money changes. They think differently. They carry themselves differently. They make decisions from confidence rather than fear. They begin identifying with prosperity internally, even before it is fully reflected externally. The same principle applies to every area of life. A person seeking confidence often spends years trying to become confident. They read books, attend seminars, and search for techniques. Yet they continue identifying as someone who lacks confidence. Living from the end means stepping into the feeling of confidence now. It means asking yourself how a confident person would think, speak, and act in this moment. Rather than waiting to become confident, you begin expressing confidence today. One reason living from the end is so effective is that it changes your identity. Most people focus on changing circumstances, but circumstances are often influenced by identity. When you see yourself as someone who already embodies the qualities you desire, your actions begin aligning with that image. You stop acting from limitation and start acting from possibility. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from certainty. Another benefit of living from the end is that it creates emotional freedom. People who live toward their desires often postpone happiness. They tell themselves, "I will be happy when," and then attach their happiness to some future event. They believe fulfillment will arrive once circumstances improve. But living from the end allows you to experience fulfillment now. It allows you to feel grateful, confident, and abundant before external evidence appears. This does not mean you stop pursuing goals. It means your emotional well-being is no longer dependent on reaching them. Many people struggle with this concept because they believe they need evidence before they can feel differently. They think they must see results first, but if your state depends entirely on circumstances, then circumstances remain in control. Living from the end reverses that relationship. You choose the state first. You decide who you are first. You embody the feeling first. Then you allow circumstances to catch up. This does not mean pretending that challenges do not exist. It means refusing to let challenges define your identity. A person living from the end may still encounter obstacles, delays, or setbacks. The difference is that they do not allow those experiences to pull them out of their chosen state. They remain loyal to the vision they have accepted internally. They continue seeing themselves as the person they have chosen to become. One of the clearest signs that you are living from the end is a sense of inner certainty. You stop feeling desperate. You stop constantly wondering whether your desire will happen. You stop needing continuous reassurance. Instead, you begin carrying a quiet confidence that what you have accepted internally is already influencing your life. This confidence allows you to remain steady even when circumstances have not fully changed. Over time, living from the end becomes natural. What once felt like an exercise becomes a way of life. The desired state becomes your dominant state. You no longer feel as though you are chasing your future, because you are already identifying with it. This separation begins to disappear. You stop being the person who wants and become the person who is. Remember, transformation is not about forcing reality to change. It is about changing the state from which you experience reality. When you live toward your desire, you remain aware of the distance between you and what you want. When you live from the end, you close that distance internally. So stop waiting to become the person you wish to be. Stop postponing confidence, fulfillment, abundance, or success until some future moment. Begin thinking from it, begin feeling from it, begin responding from it. Let it become your identity now. Because the moment you stop living toward your desire and start living from it, everything begins to shift. And what once felt far away starts moving naturally into your experience. As we come to the end of this message, remember this powerful truth. The secret is not entering the desired state once. The secret is remaining there. Anyone can feel inspired for a moment. Anyone can imagine a better future for a few minutes. But lasting transformation belongs to those who persist. It belongs to those who continue believing when circumstances have not yet changed. It belongs to those who remain faithful to their vision, even when there is no immediate evidence to support it. Your dominant state is shaping your experience every day. If you consistently return to fear, doubt, and limitation, those patterns become familiar. But if you consistently return to confidence, fulfillment, gratitude, and certainty, those qualities begin becoming your new reality. Stop measuring your progress only by what you see. Some of the most important changes happen long before they become visible. A new identity forms first, a new expectation develops first, a new level of confidence emerges first. The outer world often changes only after the inner state has become stable. Whenever doubt appears, return to the state. Whenever circumstances challenge you, return to the state. Whenever fear tries to pull you backward, return to the state. Not because you are forcing anything to happen, but because you are choosing to remain loyal to the version of yourself you have decided to become. Remember, persistence is more powerful than perfection. You do not need to be flawless, you simply need to keep returning. Over time, what once felt unnatural begins to feel normal. What once felt distant begins to feel real. What once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. So leave today with a commitment to remain faithful to your desired state. Live from fulfillment. Think from fulfillment. Respond from fulfillment. Let it become your new identity. Because when you stop leaving the state of your wish fulfilled, reality eventually finds a way to reflect it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Your presence here means more than you know, and I truly appreciate your commitment to growth, awareness, and transformation. If this message inspired you, take a moment to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs this reminder today. Every interaction helps these ideas reach people who are ready to create meaningful change in their lives. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Write these words, "I remain in the state." Let that statement become more than a comment. Let it become a daily reminder, a reminder that your power lies not in occasional belief, but in consistent assumption. A reminder that your future is influenced by the state you choose to occupy today. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to invest in your own growth. Until next time, continue believing in greater possibilities, continue expecting good things, and continue returning to the version of yourself who already embodies the life you desire. Take care, stay inspired, and remember, what you persist in eventually becomes your reality.